The mist still clung to the savanna grasses as Kaelan made his pre-dawn rounds, the chill seeping through his worn ranger uniform. His breath plumed in the cool air, a stark contrast to the rising sun that bled bruised purples and golds into the eastern sky. He'd seen plenty of wildlife in distress in his short tenure, but nothing prepared him for the sight that greeted him by the derelict outpost fence. Huddled against the weathered wood, barely a shadow in the lifting fog, was a male lion. Young, judging by its still developing mane, but horribly emaciated. Its golden eyes, usually blazing with predatory fire, were dull, fixed on some unseen point in the distance, distant even as Kaelan approached. Ribs protruded like a skeletal cage beneath matted, dust-caked fur. It didn't react to his presence, didn't even stir, a sure sign of its profound weakness. Every inch of Kaelan's training screamed at him to back away, to radio in, to observe from a safe distance. Lions were not to be interfered with, especially not a male this size, even one clearly at death's door. Protocol dictated a sterile approach, a report to veterinary teams for assessment and potential euthanasia. But the sheer helplessness in its gaze, the stark visibility of its suffering, spoke of a pain that transcended mere guidelines. This wasn't just a sick animal, it was dying, slowly, agonizingly, mere yards from human help. A profound, almost desperate compassion seized Kaelan, overriding the icy grip of fear that usually accompanied such close proximity to a predator. He knew what he was about to do was insane, career-ending, potentially fatal. Yet, without conscious thought, he found himself fumbling for the slab of impala meat he'd been saving for his own dinner, a grim necessity when supplies ran low. His hand, calloused from work, trembled as he broke off a piece. The lion finally stirred, a flicker of awareness in its glazed eyes, its head lifting fractionally. The air was thick with the scent of fear, both the lion's and his own. He crouched low, his boots scuffing the dry earth, extending his trembling hand palm up with the offering. The lion watched, unblinking. It was an agonizing, silent exchange between predator and prey, reversed and distorted by a shared vulnerability. The silence stretched, profound and heavy, broken only by the rapid thumping of Kaelan's heart. Then a low rumble, barely audible, escaped the lion's throat. A sound of desperate hunger, not aggression. Slowly, deliberately, the lion reached forward, its massive jaws carefully, gently, closing around the meat. Kaelan felt the brush of its rough tongue, the warmth of its breath, a primal connection forged in defiance of all natural order. It was then, as the lion swallowed, a visible effort, that Kaelan became aware of the shifting shadows. The mist, finally receding, revealed them. 5 lionesses, sleek and powerful, sat in a silent semicircle behind the male, their amber eyes fixed not on him, but on Kaelan. They hadn't made a sound, their presence manifesting with an unnerving quietness that spoke of deliberate observation. A shiver, colder than the dawn air, ran down Kaelan's spine. This wasn't just a lone, starving animal. This was a pride, silently witnessing his impossible act of defiance. In that heightened state of awareness, his gaze lingered on the male lion, and he saw them. Not a wound from a fight or the mark of a predator's claw, but something far more deliberate, deeply unsettling. On the lion's left flank, just above its hip, etched into the sparse fur and pale skin, were a series of faint, yet unmistakable geometric patterns. Perfect triangles, intersecting lines, arranged with a chilling precision that defied nature. They weren't scars from a battle, they were brands. The revelation hit him like a physical blow, a sudden cold dread blossoming in his chest. This wasn't just a starving lion, a sick animal whose condition could be explained by natural causes. This was a puzzle, a victim of something unnatural, something engineered. Kaelan had just stepped into a profound, dangerous mystery, and his guts screamed that he was already too deep to turn back. The memory of the lion's vacant eyes, the unsettling precision of the geometric scars on its flank, played on an endless loop behind Kaelan's eyelids. Every rustle of dry grass, every distant call of a bird, seemed to echo the profound silence of the lionesses watching him. The act of hand-feeding the male felt less like a merciful intervention and more like a desperate, irreversible step across a line he didn't even know existed. Sleep offered no escape, only fragmented images of golden eyes and unnatural patterns. He felt raw, exposed, carrying a secret that gnawed at his composure. "You're walking in a daze, Kaelan. You sleep with one eye open or something?" Django's voice cut through the drone of the Jeep's engine, laced with his usual gruff humor. Django, a seasoned ranger with decades etched onto his face, didn't miss much. Kaelan fumbled with his binoculars, adjusting the focus on a distant herd of wildebeest. "Just the usual exhaustion, Django. Long nights." He tried to sound nonchalant, but his hands felt clammy, and he could feel Django's keen gaze lingering on him. The senior ranger just grunted, turning his attention back to the road, but Kaelan knew he hadn't fully bought it. Later that morning, the sun beating down mercilessly, Kaelan felt an almost magnetic pull during their routine patrol. It wasn't logic, or a radio call, or even a tracking instinct. It was a subconscious whisper, an inexplicable certainty that drew him off the established route, towards a cluster of acacia trees bordering a rocky outcrop. His boots crunched on dry earth, kicking up puffs of dust with each step. Django, initially skeptical, followed Kaelan's unspoken lead, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. They found them, the pride spread out beneath the dappled shade of the acacias. The young male lion, noticeably stronger, though still lean, lay with his head resting on a lioness's back. The very sight of the geometric scars, now more distinct in the bright sunlight, sent a fresh wave of unease through Kaelan. But it was the matriarch, the lioness with a distinctive scar across her muzzle, who truly commanded his attention. She wasn't lying down, she was sitting, alert, her gaze unwavering as Kaelan approached the edge of the tall Savannah grass. Her amber eyes, ancient and intelligent, locked onto his. It wasn't a challenge, not a warning. It was an invitation, a silent summons that chilled Kaelan to his bones even as it compelled him forward. He hesitated, his body tense, but the matriarch didn't move, didn't growl, merely held his gaze with an unnerving intensity. This was beyond animal instinct, beyond anything he'd ever witnessed. It was a conscious act of communication, trust blossoming in the most unexpected of places. The other lionesses and the recovering male watched, silent, their collective presence at a heavy weight in the mid-morning heat. Slowly, carefully, Kaelan took another step, then another. The matriarch shifted, not away, but turning her head slightly, nudging her nose towards a patch of disturbed earth near her forepaws. Kaelan's heart hammered against his ribs. He knelt, scanning the ground. And there it was, a faint shimmer almost imperceptible against the reddish soil. He reached out, brushing away a layer of dust, revealing a tiny, almost iridescent residue. It wasn't natural. It was metallic, with an unnatural sheen, clinging to the dry blades of grass and pebbles. It looked alien, a minuscule, glittering anomaly in the rugged wilderness. Django, who had approached cautiously, peered over Kaelan's shoulder, his brow furrowed. "What in the—" he muttered, his voice low, almost reverent. Kaelan felt a cold certainty take root. This wasn't just sickness. This wasn't just a strange scar. This metallic dust, placed with deliberate precision, was a clue, a direct, undeniable link to the unnatural origin of the lion's suffering. A silent message from the matriarch, revealing a dangerous truth that now extended far beyond a single, ailing animal. The metallic residue, glittering faintly on the dry earth, had cemented the awful truth. This wasn't a natural illness. The young male lion's decline was orchestrated, a cruel byproduct of human interference. The matriarch's silent plea, the inexplicable trust in her ancient eyes, had pierced Kaelan's core. He felt a profound, almost spiritual summons, an undeniable urge to return, not just to observe, but to act. Despite the searing mid-afternoon sun, despite the logistical nightmare of leaving his post, Kaelan found himself packing his emergency first aid kit, his ranger instinct battling with a far deeper, more primal directive. He returned alone, the Jeep's engine a distant hum as he trekked through the dry grass. The pride was there, huddled beneath a solitary acacia tree, a stark silhouette against the wet, unforgiving sky. The young male was visibly worse. His breathing was shallow, ragged, and a faint, sickly odor hung in the air. His ribs were more pronounced, his golden eyes glazed over with pain and fever. This time the matriarch didn't just watch. She rose slowly, deliberately, and walked a few paces away from the male, clearing a path for Kaelan. Her head remained low, her gaze fixed on him, a silent, almost desperate permission. It was an unprecedented act, a profound leap of faith that simultaneously terrified and humbled Kaelan. He knew with chilling certainty that he was entering a sacred, dangerous space, one where the rules of the wild and human intervention blurred into an unknown frontier. Kaelan knelt beside the prone form of the lion. The male didn't flinch, didn't growl, merely offered a weak, shuddering exhale. Beyond the geometric brands, now even more stark and unsettling, Kaelan discovered what he'd feared. Several angry, festering wounds were evident beneath the matted fur, hidden previously by the angle in the lion's posture. These weren't superficial scratches. They were deep, inflamed lacerations, oozing pus, clearly infected, and the source of the lion's fever. The geometric scars themselves, while healed, seemed to be points of susceptibility, almost as if they were part of a larger, systemic compromise. With hands smeared with antiseptic gel and blood, Kaelan began the agonizing process of cleaning and treating the wounds. Each touch was deliberate, precise, a delicate dance between compassion and the ever-present threat of the wild animal beneath his hands. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood, the sharp scent of antiseptic, and the dry dust kicked up by his movements. The matriarch lay just meters away, her sharp amber eyes unblinking, every muscle in her body poised, a living barometer of trust and potential danger. The other lionesses remained a silent, watchful semicircle, their presence a constant, heavy pressure. He worked meticulously, his brow furrowed in concentration. The wounds were worse than he'd anticipated, some almost necrotic. As he carefully cleaned a particularly deep cut just beneath the young male's shoulder, his gloved fingers brushed against something alien, something that didn't belong. He paused, his heart thumping a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He probed gently, his breath held. Then with a pair of sterilized tweezers, he carefully extracted it. It was tiny, barely an inch long, but it stood out starkly against the crimson of the wound. A peculiar, almost translucent fiber, thinner than fishing line, yet incredibly strong. It wasn't organic, it was synthetic, glinting faintly in the harsh light, a bizarre material he'd never seen in nature. The implications crashed down on him with a sickening force. This wasn't just human interference in a general sense. This was direct, invasive, and malicious. Someone had done this. Someone had inflicted these wounds, perhaps embedded this fiber, and left this magnificent creature to suffer and die. The mystery had deepened, twisting into something far more chilling than he could have imagined. This wasn't a natural disaster. It was a deliberate act, a chilling conspiracy unfolding right beneath his. The synthetic fiber, delicate and almost iridescent, felt impossibly heavy in Kaelan's palm. It was the undeniable proof, the smoking gun that transformed his unsettling observations into a concrete, chilling reality. Back at the outpost, the adrenaline of treating the lion faded, replaced by a cold knot of dread. He knew he had to report this, yet a strange primal instinct screamed at him to keep it hidden, to protect the fragile trust he'd forged. But duty and a desperate hope for official action propelled him towards Django's office. The small, rustic room was dim, lit by a single bare bulb that cast long, flickering shadows. Django sat at his worn wooden desk, his back partly turned, scrutinizing a map. Kaelan, still smelling faintly of antiseptic and wild animal, stood rigidly, the tiny fiber clutched in his hand, almost hidden from view. "Django, I need to show you something," Kaelan began, his voice tight with suppressed urgency. He recounted the worsening condition of the young male lion, the festering wounds, and then, extending his hand, revealed the minuscule synthetic strand. "I found this embedded deep in one of the wounds. It's not natural, Django. And there were tracks, too, human tracks, leading from deeper within the preserve, not our usual patrols. Too faint to be sure, but distinct." Django turned slowly, his grizzled face etched with weariness. He didn't even glance at the fiber, his eyes fixed on Kaelan's. a strange, unreadable expression hardening his features. Kaelan, I appreciate your initiative, truly, but you're a rookie. This is the wild. Animals get sick, they get hurt. Sometimes things get complicated. Human tracks? Could be anything. Poachers, stray villagers, even a mirage in the heat. As for this, fiber, it's probably nothing. A piece of some old rope, a discarded fishing line. His voice was low, devoid of its usual gruff humor, replaced by a steely edge Kaelan had never heard before. But Django, the geometric scars, the metallic residue, the way the matriarch, Django cut him off with a dismissive wave of his hand, his back half turned again, as if the conversation was already concluded. Kaelan, I'm warning you, don't go stirring up trouble where there isn't any. We have enough problems here as it is. Patrol your sector, keep an eye out for actual poaching activity, and leave the conspiracy theories to the tourists. This is a protected area, and we maintain order. Understand? The words hung heavy in the air, a chilling dismissal that felt less like a reprimand and more like a veiled threat. Kaelan's hopes for support, for official investigation, shattered into 1,000 pieces. He stood there, the weight of Django's dismissal pressing down on him, the tiny fiber of burning ember in his hand. He felt utterly isolated, the wild, vast, and indifferent, and the human world strangely hostile. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Kaelan found himself drawn back to the edge of the savannah, telescope in hand. He spotted the Pride, a dark silhouette against the dying light. The matriarch, ever watchful, lifted her head. Even from this distance, Kaelan felt the intense weight of her gaze, felt the unspoken language pass between them. It wasn't just acknowledgement anymore. It was something deeper, a profound comprehension of the human threat, an intelligence that mirrored his own dawning horror. She looked at him, then shifted her powerful head, gesturing subtly with her eyes towards the east, towards the distant, unexplored reaches of the preserve. A realization, cold and stark, struck Kaelan. The Pride wasn't just observing him, not just trusting him to heal one of their own. They were actively trying to show him. They had been trying to communicate, to guide him. They were not merely victims of a human-made danger. They were witnesses, trying to reveal the source, the deeper conspiracy that Django, for reasons Kaelan couldn't yet fathom, wanted him to ignore. He was not just a ranger anymore. He was a conduit, chosen by the wild itself to uncover a truth far more terrifying and expansive than he could possibly imagine. If you've been with us since the beginning, you know Kaelan's journey has been anything but ordinary. But what he's about to uncover isn't just a mystery, it's a chilling, life-threatening conspiracy that will leave you questioning everything. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story. Because the truth Kaelan found demands to be heard before it's too late. Django's dismissal had solidified Kaelan's resolve. The matriarch's silent directive, pointing him eastward, had become his compass. Dressed in a dark, tactical version of his ranger uniform, stripped of any identifying insignia, Kaelan embarked on a covert investigation. He moved silently through the dense bush, the scorching late-afternoon sun beating down, but his senses were alive, attuned to every rustle, every distant sound. He wasn't alone. The Pride, a silent, powerful escort, moved with him. The matriarch, her scarred muzzle a beacon of unwavering purpose, led the way, occasionally pausing, turning her head to ensure he was following, her amber eyes conveying a clear, intelligent intent. Two other lionesses flanked him at a distance, their movements fluid and ghost-like through the tall grass. They led him deeper than he'd ever ventured, into a seldom patrolled region where the acacia trees grew denser, their thorns like skeletal fingers. The air grew heavy, thick with a strange, acrid tang that wasn't of the bush. As they crested a rise, nestled in a hidden depression, Kaelan saw it. A camouflage camp tucked away so perfectly it was almost invisible until he was upon it. Through his binoculars, Kaelan's heart hammered against his ribs. This was no poacher's temporary hideout. This was an operation. Large chemical drums, stacked haphazardly, bore warnings in a language he didn't recognize. But their symbols were universal. Corrosive, toxic. A faint, sickeningly vibrant green liquid seeped from one, pooling on the dry earth before trickling towards a nearby stream, shimmering with an unnatural glow. Advanced drilling equipment, starkly out of place, gleamed dully under tarpaulins. This wasn't just about harming animals. It was about systematically poisoning the land itself. The geometric scars on the young male suddenly made a horrifying kind of sense. Perhaps a test or a consequence of exposure. He spotted figures moving within the camp. Men armed with automatic rifles, their movements efficient, practiced. Kaelan crouched low behind a dense cluster of bushes, the thorny leaves scratching his face. But he barely registered the pain. His focus was absolute. He had to get closer, had to collect undeniable evidence. The matriarch, sensing his intention, gave a low, almost imperceptible rumble. She and one of the other lionesses positioned themselves strategically, one on either side of the camp's perimeter, their form barely visible, blending seamlessly with the shadows. Their presence was a silent shield, a diversionary tactic if needed, or perhaps a grim warning to any who might stumble upon them. Kaelan used their silent cover, inching forward, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He recorded what he saw on his hidden camera, zoomed in on the illegible labels, the dripping chemicals, the sophisticated equipment. He managed to snatch a sample of the glowing liquid seeping into the stream, carefully collecting it in a small vial. He felt a rifle barrel almost brush his back as two of the armed figures patrolled dangerously close to his hiding spot, their low voices indistinguishable, but clearly hostile. He froze, barely breathing, the scent of their sweat and cheap tobacco sickeningly close. The matriarch's eyes, visible through a gap in the foliage, met his, a silent promise of protection, a shared understanding of the mortal danger. He backed away, slowly, methodically, every muscle screaming with tension. The raw fear was palpable, but beneath it, a furious determination burned. He had the proof. This was a vast, dangerous human conspiracy, operating right under the noses of authorities, perhaps with their complicity. The lionesses hadn't just healed his soul, they had led him to a truth that would shake the very foundations of his world, a truth that could cost him his life. The return journey from the camouflaged camp was a blur of heightened senses and raw fear. Kaelan clutched the vial of glowing liquid and the memory card from his camera, the evidence burning a hole in his consciousness. The weight of his discovery, the sheer scale of the environmental and criminal horror, pressed down on him, mingling with the chilling reality of his narrow escape. But even as his mind reeled with the implications, a deeper, more primal concern pulled him, the young male lion. He arrived back at the acacia tree as dawn broke, painting the vast sky in bruised purples and tender golds. The air was heavy, not just with the scent of dew and dust, but with impalpable grief. The pride was there, gathered in a solemn, silent semicircle around the young male, whose magnificent, albeit still developing mane was now stark against the dry earth. He lay utterly still, his breathing gone, his golden eyes, once dull with pain, now vacant and clouded. Death had claimed him. A wave of profound sorrow washed over Kaelan, mingling with a potent surge of guilt. He had tried, but it hadn't been enough. He knelt beside the lifeless form, the rough earth biting into his knees. He placed a trembling hand on the lion's flank, above where the geometric scars had been, feeling the last vestiges of warmth drain away. It was a silent moment of acceptance, a shared grief between man and beast, broken only by the soft brush of wind through the grass. The young lion had fought with a ferocity beyond his weakened state, and now he was at peace. Then a sound, low and resonant, began to ripple through the pride. A deep, guttural chorus of mourning, a rumbling lament that vibrated through Kaelan's chest, a sound born of ancient grief and profound loss. The lionesses, heads lifted slightly, let their collective sorrow fill the morning air, a powerful, almost sacred ritual of farewell. It was a sound that reached into Kaelan's very soul, deepening his resolve. The matriarch, her powerful body close, shifted. Her deep amber eyes, ancient and wise, fixed on Kaelan. Her gaze was profound, penetrating, an unspoken transfer of guardianship. It wasn't a request, it was a command, a silent, undeniable plea for justice. Her eyes conveyed a message clearer than any words. This is your burden now. You are our voice. Expose this truth. The weight of that trust, that silent demand, settled on Kaelan's shoulders, a mantle both heavy and fiercely compelling. He looked around at the mourning pride, at the meshed, indifferent Savannah, then back at the lifeless king before him. His decision, though agonizing, was clear. He would risk everything. His career, his safety, perhaps even his life. He would honor the pride's trust, unveil the horrific conspiracy, and expose the monsters who had poisoned this land and its creatures. He knew with a chilling certainty that his life would be irrevocably changed, that there was no turning back from this path, but the alternative, silence, was a burden he could not bear. He had made an unspoken promise, and he would see it through. From that initial moment, when a rookie ranger dared to offer sustenance to a dying king, Kaelan stepped onto a path that would shatter his world. The dawn mist clinging to the savannah, the very air thick with the scent of dust and damp earth, had been an unwitting witness to his first act of defiance against protocol. He'd seen the young lion's emaciated frame, felt the impossible connection, and then saw the chilling geometric scars, a silent testament to something unnatural. What the pride did next, their profound intelligence, the matriarch's unwavering gaze, shocked him to his core, leading him from faint metallic residue to a synthetic fiber embedded in a festering wound. Django's swift, icy dismissal only hardened Kaelan's resolve. Guided by the very creatures he was sworn to protect, he delved into the heart of the reserve's secret, uncovering a vast camouflaged operation, poisoning the land with toxic pollutants. The evidence burned in his hands. Though the young lion ultimately succumbed to its wounds, its final breath was not in vain. The pride's sorrowful chorus, the matriarch's profound gaze, transferred a sacred trust, a guardianship that compelled Kaelan to risk everything. His life, irrevocably changed, would now be dedicated to exposing the horrific conspiracy he'd unearthed, to honoring the silent promise made in the face of death and betrayal. He would fight for the wild dog, no matter the cost.